Hello and welcome. Today we have Ognjen Gatalo, co-founder of Nortik. For those that don't know, Nortik builds software for SaaS companies, and they've worked with startups worth over $150 million combined. Um, Ognjen also has an incredible story which we'll get into, and he specializes in SaaS strategies, optimization, which he shares through his newsletter and website saasstruts.com. So, without further ado, let's dive straight in. Welcome, Ongyen. You've let's start off with your story because I know you've shared a few posts on that, and it's a banger. Can you just talk through your journey so far and how you got into SaaS and how you arrived where you are today?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for having me, Joe. First thing. So, yeah, regarding my story, it's a pretty, interesting one, but I don't want to be, to take too much time for the story itself. So, I mean, I started, the freelancing. That's how me and Marco met. And we met at university. Basically, both of us started freelancing. We had our own clients. We were both pretty big on software development, and we decided to, why don't we combine our clients and then just start working together. And that's how Nordic was born, right? Later on, we brought in our third co-founder, Valor, and yeah, the rest is history. But that's like the shorter version. But I've always been big on SaaS, big on online communities. I started building, or I had two failed attempts at building my own SaaS. So I was always like, passionate about software, passionate about building. And yeah, Nordic is what came from all of our combined efforts to this point.
Well, so three co-founders. You met Marco first, and the amazing thing is you decided to combine, which I find really interesting. And obviously has helped you get here. But with your just moving it towards SaaS, because I know a lot of the people who listen to this are interested in SaaS. Looking back, what do you think it was about your first two that didn't quite work out, and what lessons did you take from that building SaaS in the future, which I know you're getting involved in and doing, that you're taking forward to those new ventures?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, so it's definitely the one thing that I'm all that the about which I'm always talking about online, and that's distribution or marketing. I didn't have any kind of audience online which I can present my software to. So that's definitely like a number one reason why it didn't work out. And surprisingly, it actually took my second SaaS got covered in some French and Spain's media outlets. It was like a link sharing tool, like a combined link sharing tool. It was pretty interesting. But essentially, I didn't know how to distribute this type of product. I didn't know how to monetize it. I was way too focused on building, on development, on making the best architectural decisions, while in reality I knew nothing about business itself. So right now it's a completely different story. We're always starting from the business first and the ability to actually sell a product, right?
That's really interesting because I know, like on LinkedIn, we've spoken about this. You're the marketing guy and you're talking about strategy, but actually, you did start off doing software development, right? And you're a builder, so um, is that how it happened? So distribution was your weakness, and you decided, do you know what? Let's explore that. Would you say now that you're actually more in the distribution side, or do you still get involved in the building? How does that work out?
So I'm definitely not in the building itself currently. I've been out of the development for like 3 years. But yeah, I mean, it all started when, we noticed that we actually need to get a bigger client base for Nordic if we wanted to grow. As mentioned, we started pretty, I wouldn't say pretty young, but pretty inexperienced. We landed one big client early on, which, the majority, like 90% of our work was put towards to. And then, when this things with this client didn't work out, we didn't actually think about scaling a business, right? We were only thinking about satisfying this one client and making the best development decisions for this one client, we didn't actually put the focus on our agency, right? So then we noticed, okay, we actually need to do something to get in front of other people, in front of other founders, and show what is our skill sets, what can we do, how we can present these ideas. And I've always been vocal about what we do and our ability in our internal circles. So it was like a natural path for me to take on this role, and then just start talking about this online. I think I started with content creation. I started on X, on Twitter, in 2021. Then I was on and off a bit, but yeah, later on, it all transitioned into LinkedIn, because I saw LinkedIn like a year later. That was like a big B2B space where we can actually utilize our experience, and talk a bit more about what we do and what has been our like go-to with our clients, some of the strategies that we've used, some of the product decisions that we've used. And that's basically how my role shifted from the development into marketing. I think my USP, like a unique selling point, is that I'm technical myself. I know high level concepts. I even know some of the in-depth concepts, and I know how to present them in a very like digestible way, I'd say, right? So like I yeah, currently like my main territory is product and marketing. Making product decisions, driving the product further, and making additional like marketing decisions, and driving marketing for Nordic and for our startups, our SaaS startups that we're currently building.
That's really interesting, and we are going to move on to talking about all the strategies shortly. But there's just something I really want to ask you, because we do have some agencies and people that watch. Um, so you had this big client, and you didn't like being dependent on this one client. So I thought, right, we need distribution. I'm going to make content on X, LinkedIn. Um, what was your strategy to start landing some of the, like, to be able to develop a bit of a client base where you're like, okay, we're going to try and target lower ticket and smaller, because it's faster sales cycles, we'll be able to get more work in, there'll be more of them, so we have more leverage. Or did you try and go straight for bigger business? And how did you manage to build up that traction after you kind of decided to leave that big client, or move separate ways?
Gotcha. So I would say, things happen very naturally for us. We didn't actually put in much effort at first into getting new clients after the first one, because by the time we finished our collaboration with our first client, we already made like a significant connections in our local community, and some of those connections were actually like sales agencies or referral agencies. And they already came to us and said, we have a couple of people and a couple of companies that need development help. Can you guys jump in and help us out? And that's actually how our first new clients came through, like from the referrals and the word of mouth, so to say. That's like how we scaled in the beginning. And then later on, we started utilizing techniques such as, cold outreach, cold DMing. Cold email never really worked that well for us. I saw everybody is really big on cold email, especially when I started with content. I thought, maybe we're doing something really, really wrong. But then I discovered that we're selling a really high ticket offer. Selling software engineers is definitely a high ticket a space, and in order to afford the development and the product, especially at the scale at which we are doing, with all the processes, with all the CRO psychology knowledge that we're bringing to the table, not just the typing of the code itself. You need to put some money on the side in order to be able to afford working with agencies such as ourselves. And then this transition really helped us understand what our clients are paying us for and what do we need to what we need to bring to the table, right? So it helped us step up our game. It helped us understand that, you know, not only me, Marco, and Valor can do all of the work ourselves. That's when we, you know, made our first hire, and later on started scaling from that. So currently there's 28 of us in house, and yeah, we're really really a great team.
28, going strong. I love it, man. And yeah, that's all really exciting. And I definitely want to move on to talk about obviously SaaS, because I know that's the people you predominantly help, and we want to target those people and give them some of your knowledge. So I'm going to jump to onboarding, because I think you made a post carousel on that today. So what can we do to make onboarding more fun, more engaging, and and why do we want to make it more fun, engaging? What's driving? Why is onboarding so important?
Yeah, it's a great that you've asked this today, because actually I've replied to two comments to my post with the exact same comment today, and you know, I'd say when it comes to onboarding, it really, you know, a good onboarding has needs to have two elements to it. It has to set the right expectations, and it has to get the user familiar with the platform in the process. And what I like to say, if you can nail those two, and if you can spice it up in the process, you're winning, right? So a great example of a great onboarding is what I actually talked about today, is, you know, engaging the user, explaining how the platform works at the first in the first place, and then setting the right expectations. So for example, when you know, start learning a new skill, you know, when you go into the new gym for a first time, or go into a new basketball practice for a first time, right? You don't just, you know, go into the gym and start working out or start shooting the ball or, you know, whatever. You need to have a specific type of process. You need to have a coach basically, which will say, you know, look, here's how things are going to move from this point onward. You know, you're going to train 3 times per week. This is your, you know, this is your locker room. This is your court. These are your teammates. You get familiar with them. So it's the exact same thing in SaaS, right? You need to get familiar with the platform. You need to get familiar with where things are standing on this software, but you also don't want to bore the user too much, because we're all familiar with software and how to use it. So you don't want to, um, how should I say, swerve off the norm a bit. So you want to stay on track. You want to keep a certain level of expectations that everybody already, you know, understands and knows. So for example, everybody expects to have a navigation in a sidebar. You don't want to put it like at the bottom bar, if it's not a mobile app, for example. So things like that, you know, onboarding really should move and guide the user through the first steps and getting familiar with that, with the platform. And basically, yeah, if you can have some fun in the process, like adding a mascot like Duolingo is doing with their owl, or tackle with the dog, you know, that's always like bonus points, right? So yeah, I'd say that's like the core elements to a good onboarding.
Wow, interesting. So from getting them through, but familiarity and then spicing it up, making it fun. Um, so I've heard you talk as well about the endowed progress effect. Is this to do with onboarding, or is this something slightly different?
Yeah, so the endowed progress effect is essentially a psychological effect where the goal is to give the user that initial kick in order to complete a certain action they have in mind. So it doesn't really have to always be connected to onboarding, but it in most of the time and in most of the cases, that's like the case, you know. So a great example would be on the onboarding where you don't put the user at a 0%, because that's essentially asking the user to start writing from a blank page. And if you have a blank page in front of you, it's much harder for you to think about the idea, start writing, but rather presenting them with the idea. Let's start from here, right? So a great example of the endowed progress effect is actually putting the user at the 20% mark. So letting them know that they've already completed the first step, right? Which could be anything really. It could be like creating an account, creating a workspace, joining the program, whatever. So this helps the user take the rest of the action, because it's actually scientifically proven that individuals exhibit greater motivation to complete a task when they perceive they've already made some progress towards its completion. As humans, we're naturally like drawn to incomplete things. We hate incomplete things. We want to make something complete out of something that's incomplete. So yeah, the endowed progress effect, the endowed progress illusion, actually plays really well on this part, and actually helps the user, right? You're actually providing that initial boost to the user. And as mentioned, it doesn't really have to get connected with the onboarding, but in most of the cases, it's the best way to get started with this, and it all depends from software to software.
Interesting. And I know you're really big on. When I first met you, I didn't realize that you were a software development agency. I thought you were like an optimization agency, or like you go in and optimize funnels and things like that, because you're so strong in that. Um, when it comes to um, the psychology, like endowed progress and other things, how important is that for higher ticket B2B SaaS? Because I can imagine it's really like important for like self-serve creator pack, creator offers, things like that, because they're, creators are just like, but if say a company's that invested in a 30K a year software and they know it's got value, do they care what the UI looks like? Do they care? Are these strategies still important, or do you see like, people are people, and it doesn't matter how high or ticket? I would just be curious to know your thoughts on um how the design, how the strategies psychology varies across different sized packages.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, I'm mostly writing about strategies that are mainly going to work at a startup or a mid-sized level, right? When it comes to enterprise, what we've noticed is that people don't care that much. The average age of the user inside of an enterprise environment is like 40, 50 plus, while somebody that's using startups or like you know up and rising software is much more younger, because younger people tend to take basically take more risks. That's why younger people tend to try out new softwares, and older people tend to stick what works, right? Nothing wrong with that. But my strategies that I like to talk about are mostly like can be applied in startups. They can be applied in enterprise, but I don't think if that would provide that much of a boost, right? Because enterprise customers usually come to through either word of mouth or some channels such as SEO or stuff like this. And startups are actually the ones that don't have any budgets. They don't have like 500K per year to spend on marketing. They have to leverage some, as I like to call, guerrilla marketing strategies, right? So you have to work with $0 budgets and make your product stand out. And this is why I found these strategies so interesting, because basically, like tweaking a certain thing on your sign up page or on in your hero section can bring much better results for these companies. And the parallel I'm trying to draw is for take Slack and take Microsoft Teams, for example. Slack is mostly used inside of like a startup environment, because they started as this cool new startup that that helps you connect with your team. They have really cool, like, their positioning is very like Gen Z or millennial, so to say. They have all of these. Basically, how your Slack bot communicates with you is much more adapted towards a younger audience, right? Um, and Microsoft Teams, which is like 10 times bigger than Slack. But Slack was first, but Microsoft Teams basically beat it because everybody in an enterprise environment uses Microsoft products, and naturally they just switch, switch to Teams. I don't want to, just I don't want to experiment with Slack, see what's the fuss all about. I'll just stick to what works. We already use Excel, we already use Word, Microsoft Word. Let's just switch the teams. So that's kind of the main point I was trying to make.
Yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Like, it's these like the strategies are much more important when you're dealing with people that are much more open-minded as opposed to just this is what works. We're not going to try anything. We're going to keep it the same. So that makes sense. I liked how you brought up guerrilla marketing as well. For people that don't have big massive budgets, because there's I've heard a few people talk about the purple cow theory, which is people don't remember like the most beautiful looking cow in the field. They take a picture with there's a purple cow, and that's what they remember. And so you might not have the best UI in the world, but if there's something different about it, or on the website side or actually in the product, then or you've just got some strategy that makes you stand out, then obviously that's obviously really good, isn't it? Are there any like guerrilla marketing strategies that stand out for you in terms of like on the product side or anything that you deal with?
I mean, it's hard to say, the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to guerrilla marketing. But what I can talk about is, achieving that, so to say, viral moment, or like virality. So, for example, I'll take Todoist, for example. They have what I like to call a year in review strategy. So, for example, Spotify, we all know Spotify Wrapped, right? And it's basically a play on human psychology. So, for example, when I see somebody, as humans, like, we all want to, present ourselves in a best possible light. We want to show the world how smart we are, how, I don't know, beautiful we are, or whatever. And naturally, when someone allows us to do that, or provides a platform for us to do that, you know then we're going to leverage it, right? So, for example, if I see somebody posting on Instagram, this is my Spotify Wrapped, I was in a top 1% of Metallica this year. Naturally, I want to see what artist did I listen to the most throughout that year, right? So naturally, I'm instantly opening Spotify. I'm instantly checking out Spotify Wrapped, seeing what it has to offer for me. And I think why this strategy works so well is because it's personalized. So this wouldn't work as well if it just presented the data in some form of a survey, right? So the way it works is by personalizing for the end user and saying, these are your stats. This is you basically in music, or this is you in productivity, like as Todoist does, showing you how many tasks you've completed, what was your most productive month of the year, day of the year, time frame in which you were operating. So yeah, all of these, like this strategy, definitely costed a lot of money to develop, but you don't have to look at it that way. If you're a solo founder, you can basically invest time into this. You don't have to invest into SEO. You don't have to invest into marketing. You can just invest your time into developing a feature that will blow up and get viral, and everybody will say, look at this, or whatever. So recently, I also saw, like, a great example now that comes to mind is Cluely. I don't know if you're familiar, but Cluely is this startup that basically positions itself as a cheating device, cheat on everything. It's basically an AI companion that helps you cheat on your job interviews, or in I don't know, assigning school papers or whatever. It's a basically prompt on your screen that answers the questions in real time. And what Cluely did is they actually created a Wall Street ad in Canva. They didn't actually pay for it, and just released it to Twitter. And it just said something like, hey, I know what's the founder's name. Let's call him Rob. Hey, I'm Rob. Please buy my product, Cluely.com. And it was it was just like it exploded on X, and basically the founder didn't spend any amount of money. They just created this ad in Canva, which blew up overnight. So yeah, a great example that can show you, that it isn't everything isn't as it seems on the internet, right?
Wow, yeah. I also love the example you mentioned about Spotify. Like, obviously, that's a massive company investing lots of money, but a small founder can do it. And, it doesn't have to be, oh, but, how are we going to distribute? Come back to the question, how are we going to distribute it? But it's if you make something that users are drawn to, like the year in review, and people love looking at their stats, like what did I listen to this year, and if they've got friends, they're going to be interested in that, and it can blow up. People are distributing it for you, your users are distributing it for you, and I just think that's such an amazing strategy, trying to go viral, other than like having a post that has hundreds of thousands of impressions or something like that. um
Exactly.
so moving on to, I know you do a lot of stuff with like conversion rate optimization within the product and that sort of thing. um what are like a couple, two or three of the biggest conversion wins that you think are like opportunities for SaaS to like implement straight away? Like if you saw a product, you go, do this and do this, what would you say?
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I have two in mind. First one definitely has to be something that I like to call ROI showcasing. It's not exactly a conversion strategy, but rather a retention strategy. But for me, that's a no-brainer, and any type of SaaS that has something to do with either money saved or time saved in any sense needs to implement it. So basically, ROI showcasing is this strategy that shows how much, what value does your product actually bring to the end user. So for example, Instacart shows how many hours you've saved grocery shopping, right? And they can maybe even go a step further and say, you might have used this time to learn a new skill or go to the gym or whatever. But essentially, what we've helped you do is save like 500 hours on grocery shopping by using our product. And then naturally, when you see this stat, you're like, okay, I didn't think about this in that way. I didn't know how Instacart was actually valuable to me. And there's no way you'll switch to any other provider when you see that. You're already in too deep into the product. So it doesn't make sense for you to switch. Another great example of this strategy is Uber. Like they have a program that's called Uber One, where it's a like their premium subscription service, but they actually also show you like you've saved, I don't know, thousands of dollars by using Uber One, right? By paying more for the subscription, but actually saving more on the rides. And then that actually makes sense. And as for the conversion strategy, I have to say that it's a study I've been recently covering. And that's like, it might sound crazy, but it's actually blurring a background image of blurring your product and putting it as a background image in your sign up page. So it might sound very silly, but it actually brings crazy results. And this isn't the strategy I originally came up with. This strategy was certainly circulating around. I discovered it from Tom from Marketing Ideas. Basically, what you do is basically just blur, your dashboard or whatever, the first thing that people see in your product, put it as a background on your sign up page. So naturally, people are drawn. It plays on the endowed progress effect, right? We're drawn to incomplete things. I want to see what's behind the curtain. I want to join in. I want to see what's actually happening. What's actually happening there, and yeah. So like those may be the biggest, like, hacks that I'll say. Also, another one is a putting a positive reviews on your sign up page or anywhere near your CTA buttons. So that has also proven to convert like crazy. For example, Senja has this testimonial wall when you're about to sign up, and it actually creates a lot of it basically builds trust right away. They know where to put their high intent signals. So if the user is trying to sign up, maybe they'll quit mid process if you just have a random image. But when they see the positive reviews and the what that product brought, what kind of value that product brought to others, then they'll definitely, complete their action and actually improve the conversions for that product.
Wow, interesting. So we've got the positive reviews, but that's kind of more on the sign up side, sign up conversion. Then um we've got I love the one of blur in the background, but showing it's like a peak. It's like if you've convinced this person already that there's value, back to ROI showcasing, and then they've had a peek into what the dashboard looks like, but they can't see what the bar looks like, but it's like, oh, then it just is drawing them to make that, to be able to use it. I love that idea. And when it comes to ROI showcasing, you mentioned like saving time, saving money. I imagine making, like, if it's a sales tool, like this is how much pipeline you've got. Um, I can't really remember where I was going with that. How can you? Is that something that you can only do once they've been in the product for a little while, and then you're going to gather data on them?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. So that's like the strategy where in which you use directly to cut churn and increase your retention rate, right? You want to keep your users engaged with your platform for as long as possible by always being on top of their minds. That we helped you do this and we helped you do that. And you don't ask nothing in return. You're just presenting this data and having it top of mind. So a really cool way to showcase this is on a dashboard, for example. I don't know, 10 leads saved this month, or one lead converted this month, or whatever. And but you really want to highlight how your platform did it. This is why I couldn't find any better examples than either time saved or money saved. So if your platform doesn't have to do anything with those two, it may not be as a good strategy, but you can always find a way to, to save those two. You can always find some third way, either, I don't know, as mentioned, like leads saved or whatever. So nothing comes to mind right now, but you can always like play around with it and see how you can present this to the end customer.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the things that I really like about your content, and you do this a lot. You've done it on webinars, you've done it on LinkedIn. Is you're very much like, these strategies aren't blanket. It's very much like, depending on the type of SaaS, and it's not as macro as product led or sales led. It's like within product led or within sales led, there's all these different kind of verticals,
Yeah.
or like how users interact, or time to values, or incentives, and it depends on all these variables. And that's why I love how you bring up, examples and context and that sort of thing. Um, so, what are some of the biggest SaaS trends that you're seeing right now? And this could be in software development. This could be this could be marketing, this could be anything that's just come into your mind. What's kind of standing out to you in terms of where things are going and what we should be doing?
Gotcha. So I have to say, like the first trend that we're seeing, is transition from flat-based or flat fee pricing or fixed monthly pricing to a usage-based pricing. So AI is everywhere. Everyone is building AI features, and with this, you can't charge a flat fee anymore. You must charge based on how much someone is using your platform. OpenAI does this, and if you have a feature that's basically a wrapper around OpenAI, which is 90% of AI features, you need to basically play by the rules. And you can, I mean, you can make your pricing work for you, but then you have to limit how much someone can use AI features through your platform, right? And with this limitations, people often get frustrated, you know, and they don't want to switch to a bigger plan because they can just use ChatGPT for that or whatever. And then, what makes sense in order to retain more customers is just charge a flat fee in the first place, but then either charge for AI credits later on based on the usage, or just like go with the pay as you go model. So basically you don't pay anything upfront, but you only pay how much you use our platform for. Amazon or AWS is a great example of this, but they're not a SaaS. They're like, I don't even know what AWS is. It's it's a huge company. So yeah, I mean, software that has AI features need to definitely charge based on usage. That's the first trend that we're seeing in software. If you don't have AI features, if you don't have any AI algorithm in your software, you're going to get left behind. Even if you're a big player, just because startups are being born and developed every day, and people will someone will come up with a new idea that's basically exact same thing that you do, but they have AI, and they can do maybe a better prediction analysis, or they can like do a better search with AI, providing more context. These are all like micro features that can help companies switch to them because they maybe have a lot of data they need analysis done on, and so and so. Another thing that I saw, like another big trend, is it's something that's called consolidation in SaaS. So what I mean about when I say consolidation is that companies don't want to manage tens or hundreds of SaaS apps anymore. They want more, they want the everything app, right? So this is why Notion is so popular. It literally replaces 30 different apps. Notion is like your, I don't know, journal, your product management tool, your sales pipeline, your content calendar, all in one, right? So you don't have to pay for 10 different apps. You can just use Notion and basically bring everything into Notion. And this is the first time we noticed in our agency that we can basically just switch everything to Notion was like 2 years ago. And then we said, why are we paying for, I don't know, Breezy? It was a HR platform that organizes candidates. And we said, why don't we just use Notion for that? Why don't we just use Notion for our sales pipeline? Why don't we just use Notion for our content calendar? And why don't we just use Notion for our internal agency operations, SOPs, knowledge base? And basically we switched to Notion from then, never looked back. Everything works. So let's not how should I say, let's not do anything about it to make it not work. But yeah, I'd say we're seeing a shift towards the everything apps pretty soon. And vibe coding is also like a huge thing, but vibe coding really has a bad rep online, and I'm one of those who isn't a fan of vibe coding, because agencies are being born just to fix vibe coding mistakes. So you can't really move into the narrative of, you'll just vibe code 100K per year SaaS in 2 nights. It isn't possible. The SaaS space is really competitive. It really requires a deep understanding of it. And this is why we always approach our clients and let them know, building a strong MVP, building an MVP that you're actually going to get customers with, isn't something that is going to be done by a 15-year-old on a weekend. And this is why you hire agencies. This is why you hire our agency, Nortik, that to build you a software that actually sells. You can hire somebody or you can do it yourself. But if you really want to build a software that sells, then you still want to hire professionals that will build it out for you and that understand the space.
It's really interesting hearing you talk about vibe coding, because you hear a lot of the people that are big fans of it aren't necessarily software developers. They might be marketers, and marketers saying, "Oh, I can build an app and stuff like that." I also heard, I think it's like 30% of YC applications now are vibe coded, which is kind of nuts. But in my head, I thought, oh, maybe Onion's really like busy. He doesn't have as much time to build anymore. Maybe I had in my head before we spoke, maybe vibe coding is useful for you because you can communicate to your like the more dev people much quicker. But it's interesting that you say um, like it's overhyped, and yeah, it's really interesting to kind of hear from like the horse's mouth that it's not all the hype. And yeah, it's really interesting. The other thing you mentioned as well about aggregation tools, Clay is another fantastic example. Before, you need like all these different tools, and you just go to Clay. They've got a database, so you can import your lead list. It'll do all the scoring. It'll do the enrichments. All the tools are they buy it in bulk, and they it passes the cost on to the if you use the credit or not. Um, and it just saves having to go to 300 different tools. Um, Fantastic. So we've got 15 minutes left, and I also want to talk about a couple of other things, and also yourself and Nortik a little bit more. But let's move on to kind of like metrics and growth. So what are the core metrics that every SaaS founder should track? Um, and then what should they be tracking at different stages as well?
Gotcha. So there's really, I'd say, depends on the software, but any type of SaaS business should really be tracking four metrics, and this is monthly recurring revenue (MRR), customer acquisition cost, like how much it costs you to acquire new customers, customer lifetime value, how much does that customer bring to you over their lifetime span that they're paying for your software, and churn rates. And everything else is really a bonus, like a net promoter score. How much are people willing to recommend your software isn't as important as how much are you spending to acquire a customer, for example. So those are really the big four, in my opinion. And we're actually started building a SaaS in the churn prevention space, or retention space. Basically, we noticed that many SaaS companies and many SaaS founders don't actually know how much users they're churning, how much users are leaving their platform, and most importantly, they don't understand why. So we started building our software that will help them get signals on how do their customers use their platform and what type of behavior they are exerting on their platforms, right? So But yeah, essentially it really comes down to, MRR is definitely something that we see every day in terms of charts, either on LinkedIn. I'm really big on X. On X, every like third post is like somebody showing their growth chart, MRR chart. Everybody flaunts their MRR. I mean, it's okay, but it gets pretty crazy when somebody gets a first customer for like $10 and says, we just reached 120 ARR. You don't know how much that customer will stick on your platform. So ARR is not a as powerful metric as MRR is, because ARR is basically assuming that you'll get 12 payments, which is, you don't know if that's the case. But if you have, you don't know if it's the case to get the sale next month. But you still track MRR. So yeah, I'd say those metrics are really important. I think churn is, in my opinion, even more, if not, like, I wouldn't say more important than sales, because sales is the most important metric, but it's actually at the same level. Why wouldn't you keep the customers that you fought so hard to get in the first place? Why wouldn't you like understand what's happening on your platform? Why wouldn't you like know how to keep those and keeps those users on your platform? So yeah, basically, like, those are the big four. This is why we started moving into this space. This is why we started building out our new platform. I don't want to name drop right now. I want to keep it for when it's ready for the public, which will hopefully be somewhere in October. We made our first mistake with the SaaS that we started building in the social media space. We don't want to make this mistake anymore. So yeah.
Awesome. Just a really quick question, Onion, because I could go a little bit over, but I don't want to encroach on your time. Are you all right to run kind of 10 minutes over, or do you want to stop at 2 o'clock sharp?
Yeah, I'm flexible, so yeah, no
Yeah.
worries. We
Oh,
can
awesome.
we can
Just awesome, mate. Great. So, um, yeah, quick one on that actually. I remember speaking to Anand Nambia from OneFlow, and he was literally talking. I said to him, "What do you want?" And he was talking about, I want to be able to identify when people are going to churn 3 months before they're going to churn. So he might be someone really worth speaking to, because that was something that he was like, "This is my focus for 2025." Um, the other thing that's interesting as well is you mentioned about MRR being more powerful than ARR, and I was thinking, yeah, that's true. And I guess it depends on, if you're selling an annual contract and that's the main thing you're selling, then ARR is the right one. But if you're selling something that's monthly and and then you're converting that into ARR, you're almost saying that we sell annual packages when you don't. So it's definitely a funny one. But I spent a little bit of time with Max Greenwell from Warmly, and he mentioned, when he went through YC, that it was all about ARR, MRR. It was like, is your MRR bigger than last week? If not, get it bigger than last week. And it's just like balls. You've got all these other metrics confusing everything. But I think you're so right about churn as well, because if churn's really really high, it's people it might be indicative because they've had a bad experience, because you've not given them the value that maybe you promised, and then that can lead to all sorts of problems with brand. So I'm no expert on which metric's the most important, but I kind of feel like retention and keeping customers is just, it's got to be
that
up there, hasn't it, with Emma? So
that
uh, anyway, so you mentioned talking about your new startup as well, which is interesting. And um, so moving on to Nortik then, what makes you different from uh, a standard or typical software development company in SaaS?
That's a great question, and I finally have an answer for that. We had a very hard time, figuring out what made us different, right? And we banged our head on our desks every time we got this question asked. We always, tapped into the, we have the best engineers. We can lower your salary or engineering costs. And those are like, every time we mentioned why we're different, we thought that basically we're not different at all. We're just making excuses. And finally, why I really think we are different is because we understand CRO and we understand product. So if I have to sum it up in one sentence, that would be, if you hire some other software development agency, you'll get a product that works. But if you hire Nortik to build a product for you, you'll get a product that sells. So, and that's the core difference. We will definitely make that your product works, but we also know and understand positioning. We understand behavioral psychology. We understand UX. We understand CRO. We know how to make your product pop, stand out, and basically become shoulder to shoulder competitor with other big players in your space from day one. you know and on top of all of that, we also know the strategies on how you can start growing it or grow it further. And I think that's a really good thing that you mentioned, like at the beginning of this podcast. You thought that we are a funnel optimization agency, and you're not far from wrong, because we are a essentially a software development agency, right? We develop software, but we are also a SaaS optimization agency. So our entry package is basically SaaS optimization, where we'll jump in, we'll turn your SaaS on its head, shake it up and say, this is what's wrong with your product. This is what's wrong with your code base. This is what's wrong with your positioning. This is what's wrong with your marketing, you know, and we'll come up with all of these metrics, and as mentioned, what's your MRR? What's your churn? You don't know what's your churn? Okay, you need to understand your churn. You need to understand why specific feature, isn't converting. Is this button supposed to be placed in the upper left corner or in the upper right corner? Is it supposed to be green? Is it supposed to be red? Those are just like the basics. We dive much deeper into those once we start dissecting the products. But essentially, what makes us stand out is our thorough knowledge of, most importantly, SaaS startups. Uh, and this is why I think we can help like 90% of SaaS startups in the market. We've worked with over 35 startups in this space. As mentioned, we've developed some pretty huge startups that got acquired. Our combined client base raised over 150 million. So that's like a huge metric that we're really proud of. We've been a part of some, really big products that you've definitely heard about, and we've helped them achieve this success by our in-product knowledge of our team, knowledge of our systems that we've built throughout these years, and the research that we've done. There's only a fragment of it that I'm sharing in SaaS strats. There's some strategies that are really cool, and I'm very how should I say, sad that I can't share, because it comes down to one example, and that we're under NDA for, and I can't share that, unfortunately. But once we sign the NDA with our clients, then we show them the bottom of the iceberg strategies that definitely get them hooked much more.
I love that, man. I love that. Again, it comes back to a lot of your content is around the strategy and just insane in-depth knowledge of SaaS. And it's like, we can build software, but that might not be the answer. It might be CRO, it might be UX, but we're actually going to figure out, because we know SaaS so well, we're going to figure out what your actual bottleneck is, and then we can go from there, which is, I think, is amazing. And I think, when I look on LinkedIn, there's no one that really comes on par with you in terms of SaaS strategy, SaaS optimization. I think you are um, the category leader in terms of what I see, and I think that's just a really good way to obviously get customers and things like that. But final question then, mate. So where can people follow you, Onyen? Where can they learn the latest strategies? And where can they find out more about Nortik?
Yeah. So I'm, as you know, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so they can follow me on LinkedIn, Ognjen Gatalo. They can find me on X with on the same name. I recently got back on X, mainly sharing like much smaller, much more digestible nuggets of SaaS information over there. I'm also active on Instagram, not as much as on LinkedIn, but if you really want to, so for everyone that's really interesting in how they can elevate their product, how to discover the winning strategies big SaaS companies use, they can visit my newsletter called saastrats.com. And also, they can always find new blog posts and updates about our agency and our new offers on our website, nordicsoftware.com. So, yeah, basically two websites, nordicsoftware.com and saastrats.com.
Awesome. We'll put a link to all those in the description. Yeah, and I just want to say, man, it's just been fantastic having you on. Like I say, I don't think there's anyone that knows as much as you guys about SaaS strategy, and it's just been a massive learning experience for myself and hopefully the viewers as well. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.